listener, and welcome to another episode of We Read It One Night, the podcast where two sisters invite you to join the romance revolution by chatting about the books that made us want to stay up all night reading. Today, we're discussing the book that reeled us back into romance, The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. Listen to corgis, enemies to lovers, and a discussion about the metaphorical frying pan of love, all in the second book in the wildly popular Bridgerton series. Enjoy the show! Okay, so, listener, you've probably heard of the movie Encanto, which came out on Disney Plus recently. And you've also probably heard a lot of people using like two specific songs from it on like TikTok and Reels and social media in general. One of them is a song that has been promoted as like the eldest sister anthem. And it's the one by the super strong sister in Encanto, because they all have magic powers. She's super strong, and she's like singing about how she has all this pressure from her family, and she's like, pressure like a drip, 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 and it never stops. That one. So I was all ready to like accept the plight of the older sister. And listen, I do respect the plight of older sisters everywhere. And I was ready to be like, okay, fine, it's the older sister anthem. Until I learned that Louisa, who sings that song, is the fucking middle child. And if that ain't the middle child experience, having like our experience and our struggles co-opted by the other sibling orders, like, I don't know what is. Like, of course, the oldest sisters are walking around stealing the middle child song. No, justice.
All right. However, let me just say that Lin-Manuel Miranda has literally said that, quote, Luisa's song in Encanto is a love letter and apology to his older sister who grew up bearing burdens he never experienced.
Okay, here's my thing.
It's literally about his older sister.
Here's my thing, though. One, I technically still am an older sister. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
As a middle child.
So is Luisa.
But two, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, Lin-Manuel Miranda is a man. He doesn't get like, okay, it's a love letter and apology, but like, man, she's the middle child. Why not give that song to the oldest sister then? Why are you giving it to the middle child?
Yeah, it's unclear because there's like no clear reason for the older sister to be. You haven't even seen the movie. Is what I'm saying.
Seen enough of spoilers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why they made her the oldest sister. It's not really. I don't think it's not really plot relevant like at all. But
I'm just saying, like, that's the middle child experience. And Lin-Manuel Miranda is what? The youngest child? So he's co-opting the middle child experience and putting it on to the oldest. Like, also a younger child thing to do.
It would have overall made a lot more sense to switch them just because, like, the main character has the most beef with the oldest sister. And I feel like it would be more likely if they were, like, closest in age, you know? And then we have, like, Luisa being the oldest. I don't know.
Anyway, I'm steamed. I'm steamed.
I mean, they're not promoting it as that. That's just like people like identified with it. You know, it's not like
I'm saying that's fucked. I'm saying that's the middle. Like, I understand people identify with it. And listen, I love and respect people identifying with it. I'm just saying, once again, middle children are getting the short end of the stick. We never name a song written about the middle child experience. Name a main character. Name a main character that has to deal with a middle child experience. In movie, Kevin is the youngest. Kevin McAllister is
not of the cousins, and that's the relevant group there.
He's the youngest child in his family unit. Kevin McAllister is the youngest child. Name a movie that stars name a story about the middle child.
Isn't that, I can't remember what it's called, but that show on the Disney Channel where there's like the baby. Pretty sure she's not the oldest.
Good Luck Charlie.
Maybe. I have no idea.
She's the oldest girl. She only has an older brother.
Sure.
So still the oldest.
Okay, but still, middle child.
Here's my thing. I did a whole psychology project on birth order, Rachel. Gender matters.
I know. I'm just saying, you're saying there's no middle child representation.
Well, that show was about fucking Charlie. Guess who Charlie is? The youngest child. It's Good Luck Charlie. The
It's because
premise of
I
the
think it's because
show.
no, the premise is her writing like letters or I've never really seen it, but it's like letters or something. It's like talking to Charlie.
Yeah,
It's
about the
about
youngest
her.
child.
No, about like advice or whatever. I don't know.
I'm
Reese.
just saying, justice for middle children everywhere.
Okay, my movie pop culture plea for this episode, and this is going to involve spoilers for the Spider-Man. I forget what it's called. The recent
No Way
Spider-Man.
Home. Spider-Man
No Way Home in theaters. So if you have not seen that and are going to, maybe like skip 2 minutes. But so the ending of that involves everyone losing their memory that Peter Parker ever existed, and that includes his girlfriend. And honestly, I wasn't that into like the romance element of that movie until the very end, when it ends with him like coming back and trying to talk to her and she doesn't recognize him, and him like, you know, he has this like whole speech prepared, but like he doesn't end up giving it because he's like, I'm gonna have to like start from scratch. And that just made me realize how much I want to read a romance novel with a one-sided magical memory erasure premise. The one-sidedness and I don't know what the one-sided is. The magic element is critical, but I also have many other detailed criteria. It needs to be from the perspective of the person who remembers. It needs to, that's something negotiable. Like it could be like both perspectives. And it has to be that everyone else has forgotten them too, not just the love interest, because otherwise it'd be too easy. They could have someone else prove their identity otherwise. You know what I mean? See my point below, which is that like they want them to remember, like they're trying to get them to remember. And like what I'm thinking actually is like it's kind of like an Addie LaRue, but like where she actually has a chance, you know? Like it's not like they keep forgetting her. It's like they forgot her once and she's like trying, and it can be either the hero or the heroine that does the forgetting.
Well, there's definitely that. Not the one. So we got recommended one of those on Instagram.
Yeah.
But a better an example, and I haven't read that, so I don't know. It's like the Crave series by someone. It's like Twilight fan fiction. Ha ha ha. Twilight. We just did Twilight episodes.
I'm gonna read that. I'm glad they suggested that, but I don't think it's from the person who forgot, who remembers perspective, right? It's only from the but that's okay.
Yeah, but there's the other one in which there's like they're like angels and the girl, but it's from the perspective of the girl. And like spoiler alert, like I forget what it's called, but like in the fourth book, it's revealed that like at one point she was married to Satan. Like
that's what I thought Crave was for a sec. Yeah.
No, but it's like that one. But that one's also from like the whole premise is that like every time she remembers her boyfriend, like she dies.
Yeah. And this is making me excited to watch the, I guess, fourth Spider-Man movie. This is the only Spider-Man movie I've seen since the Tobey Maguire days, FYI. It's making me excited to see it, but because it's an action movie and, you know, it's about teenagers, like I just don't trust that they'll be able to like do it as well as I would want. So like I would also
it's not about teenagers anymore. It's about he's going to be in college. At the very least. I'm guessing there's going to be a time jump.
Sure, but you're still a teenager at that point. But yeah, whatever. I get the teenagers thing is not as critical as the fact that it's an action movie and this is not the focus of the movie. But yeah. Thank you.
But I feel like Spider-Man movies always have had a heavier romance element than other superhero movies.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying like the tropes are not as strong. It's the same way as like we watched John Wick 2 yesterday. And if that was a romance, he would definitely be getting with Ruby Rose, who is either deaf or mute and only does sign language, like that character, and or the sister of the mafia guy. However, both of them just die instead. So
the hot lady always dies in John Wick.
Multiple hot ladies die.
The love story in John Wick is between John Wick and his dog.
Yeah, I know. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying like that's the way action movies treat it. And honestly, I like the John Wick approach a lot better than like the James Bond approach where the hot women just exist for him to like fuck them and then they die. Like I that doesn't do anything for me. That's
what turned me off. Everybody, and I realize that this may get me some angry emails. But I tried to watch The Witcher, you know, that series on Netflix. It has Henry Cavill. Like, admittedly, everyone in that show is super hot. Like, I understand why people like it. And it's big in the romance community, at least in the Facebook groups that I am a part of. But I started watching the first episode and he literally meets this woman who's like this badass woman, and they like, I don't know, fight some townspeople together, and then like they're like hanging out in the forest. They fuck, and then not 5 screen minutes later, she dies. She gets killed. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't even finish the episode. And you know what? There is a small possibility that character somehow comes back to life, because I definitely saw a post like talking about her in a way that implied that she was a bigger character than just like random badass woman Henry Cavill fucks before she dies. But yeah, I was just like, I don't understand. Like, I can't get past this. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really just don't like that the first 20 minutes of this show was Henry Cavill fucking someone, and then she immediately, a really cool character too. I was excited about her character. She seemed like she was super cool, and then she just
Yeah.
fucking died.
Yeah. And I understand, like, you pointed this out, like, action movies, I guess, have their own tropes the same way, like romance
Yeah.
books do. That's just one I could do without. But yeah. I would recommend the Spider-Man one, though. The plot, it had more of a followable plot than, like, most action movies I've seen.
Speaking of pop culture, Bridgerton.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn today, which is the second book in the Bridgerton series, which, if you have been living under a rock, was adapted. The first book was adapted by Netflix, and the second season, which is based on this book, is coming out at the end of March. But it's delightful, and so we're doing this book. So the last 3 weeks, we talked about Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, which, as Rachel and I talked about in part 1 of that was sort of like our entry into romance. And this book was our re-entry into romance. I'm going to give a big shout out to Elodie from my book club for choosing this book for our discussion of March 2020. It was the first week of lockdown. I was working from home. It was a Tuesday. Actually, it was a Monday night. And I borrowed my roommate, who was also in my book club, borrowed her copy of this book, and I stayed up until like 3 a.m. and then like every spare minute during the workday, I read this book. I promise I actually did work that day, if anyone like that I work with is listening to this, but like during my lunch break, like I binged it, and then I binged it like the rest of the series, 1 book a day, and then like I came home later that week and I was like reading it to like spend quarantine at our mom's house, and Rachel was like, "Why are you always like reading? Like, what are you reading? What are you doing?" And I was like, "Don't fucking talk to me right now. I'm hanging out with the Bridgerton family." Yeah, and then I just, read 150 books in a year. But this was the first one. This was my
Starting
gateway.
in March. That's
Starting
in
in March 2020.
Yeah.
Like literally probably like a book a day for at least like 6 months. And then I started to slow down and like actually reading them, which like I still like 2021 me is like, I don't know how you physically read that many books, because like audiobooks for the win, baby. But 2020 year, that was the first year since like 6th grade when I could just like mainline like with my eyes books. And I'm pretty sure I gave myself carpal tunnel from like holding my phone in like one specific position at night, like while lying in bed until like 3 a.m.
I still don't know how you've never had the experience of dropping your phone on your face.
I don't hold it above my face. That's uncomfortable.
No. It's not that you hold it directly above your face. It's that when you drop it, the phone has a magnetic attraction to your face and it tilts forward and flies forward and hits you in the face.
Here's my thing. I don't look at my phone while lying on my back. That's how I got carpal tunnel, because I was on my side. I lay on my side. I don't like laying on my back.
But you never like sit up with like a pillow?
Yeah, but it's below my face.
Right.
Like,
but then you slide down and you slide down enough and the phone senses
that.
Weakness and the magnetic pull is strong enough and it just happens. I don't know what to tell you.
No, by the time if I'm getting that low, I'm turning on my side. I don't know what that experience is. That sounds incredibly either like directly above my face or like even just like resting on my chest so that it could fall. Like either of those sound very uncomfortable ways to read something on my phone. I don't like that at all. So no, I don't have that problem. Sorry.
It's necessary to play cup pong on Game Pigeon.
No, I play that on the table. Maybe that's why you lose.
Oh, on the table, I know, but sometimes desperate times.
Okay. The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. Second book in the Bridgerton series about Anthony, the eldest Bridgerton brother, and his enemy to lover, Kate Sheffield, who in the show is going to be named Kate Sharma.
Yep. Woohoo. So this book starts out with a little flashback.
Wait.
What?
Sorry, first I want to talk about the cover.
Okay.
So almost all iterations of this book cover have some kind of sword on them. There's like 5, like there's so many fucking different versions of this book cover, but they all have some sort of like saber, like a old timey times like dueling sword.
Mm-hmm.
And never once is there a sword fight.
It's a good point.
Like who is the cover designer for, or designers, because there's probably multiple for this book? I just want to talk. I want to know this bait and switch. There's not a single sword. There's not even a duel. The duel was in the last book. Anyway, I'm a little salty. about the lack of sword fighting.
Yeah.
However, I do thank this book for teaching me how to pronounce the word Viscount, because definitely
Viscount.
did not know that before.
Yeah. So this book starts out with a little flashback,
A prologue.
a prologue, if you will, to the good old times when Edmund Bridgerton, aka Anthony's dad, was still alive. And he was a great dad because he would hang out with his kids.
There was Edmund, as you'll find out shortly. He's fucking dead. And then Violet's the mom, and they have 8 kids, and they're all named in alphabetical order. So Anthony is the oldest, and the next is Benedict, and then it's, Colin, Daphne, Eloise, Francesca, Gregory, Hyacinth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a 20-year age gap between like Anthony and Hyacinth.
Yeah, for sure. They're super in love, TM. And Edmund was just such a great dad because he would take his babies hiking and not invite his wife for some reason. She was never allowed to come hiking. But
she might
okay.
freckle, Rachel. She might,
I guess it's like one-on-one daddy bonding time. So Anthony's the oldest, so he got the most hiking time with dad. And then when his brothers were born, they got to come, and presumably Daphne. And in Anthony's eyes, unsurprisingly, his dad is like the best guy ever, and he just aspires to nothing more than to be just like him. It's also kind of rude that, so Anthony gets like his dad's watch or something that he got from his granddad. That just always makes me think about how rude it is. I mean, I guess it's unavoidable, but like a family heirloom that only one kid can have. I don't know. It just feels like
primogeniture. He literally, the whole title, the whole structure of the British aristocracy
that makes it even worse.
Family heirloom, only one kid can inherit.
Sure, but then why not have like multiple heirlooms and like each kid gets something? Like how hard, you're fucking rich. You could have multiple watches or like a watch and like a tiara. I don't know, whatever. It just seems extra. It just seems like the crown on top of the primogeniture shit show.
Well, eventually, here's the problem with that. You can't have an heirloom because, like, okay, say there are 8 watches, so each Bridgerton sibling gets one. But then Anthony, at the end, ends up having 4 kids. He only has one watch. What is he going to go to his other siblings?
You double fist, obviously.
What?
Yeah, that's a good point. You would need like almost infinitely many for like all the whatever. Then just like don't do that. Okay.
Anyway, Anthony loves his dad. He's such a dramatic hoe about his relationship with his dad, but it's still very cute, just like how like much he loves his dad and like how much he looks up to him. But then unfortunately, when Edmund is 38 years old and Anthony is just 18, Edmund dies from a bee sting.
Oh my God.
It's not funny. Anaphylactic shock is not funny. Bee allergies are not funny. But I just remember the first time I read this book and I was like, a beast?
I know. I was like, just like, geez, Louis. And it's just like the way he finds out. It's like Anthony's 18 and he just got back from Eton or whatever. And he's like just walking around like wondering where everyone is. And then he like happens upon his oldest sister, Daphne, like just sobbing. And she's like, Dad's dead. And he was like, what? How? And she's like, it was a bee. Like, okay.
And he's like, well, to be fair, Anthony is like, no, a fucking bee cannot kill a grown-ass man. What are you talking about?
They all say that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's just like absurd.
Which is absolutely bonkers to me. Like, I understand that this is like historically correct, but it's absolutely bonkers to me that there was a time when like people didn't understand allergies.
Yeah. I mean, well, the whole thing of like, you don't usually get the allergy until the second sting is very counterintuitive. Yeah, I know. Like I would never have thought that. Although, I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense, but like it would be kind of baffling.
General, yeah. I feel like people didn't understand, like if people were like lactose intolerant, I feel like they didn't really understand that.
Right. Yeah.
Like even like spring allergies, like if you have like seasonal allergies, like they call that hay fever. They thought you were just like the hay made your nose itchy. They still call
it hay fever.
Sure, well, I know,
does.
But like
it does make your nose itchy.
It wasn't allergies. You know what I mean? It wasn't like recognized as like an allergy until
that makes sense.
Later. I very recently looked this up, but it's just like bonkers to me.
Yeah, no, it is. And that, I mean, but like, what would knowing about it do? I guess you avoid it, but like, you can't do anything to fix it. I mean, I assume they would figure out food allergies pretty quickly. Like, if you don't,
or your kid just dies.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, if you have severe enough allergy, like your kid is just gonna die.
Yeah. Isn't it pretty common for the first time to not be that severe though? Or maybe it's just that it can be like super severe whenever, like out of nowhere. This brings me to the question of how long you can actually survive while in anaphylaxis, because Edmund seems to have died in literal minutes. And that just brings me back to Blackstone Dragon's heir when Catherine eats the strawberry vinaigrette and then literally passes out. Like, she has anaphylaxis so severe that she can't breathe and therefore she passes out. And yet somehow he still has time to get her to the hospital. You can only survive, like 5-6 minutes without breathing? Like, how does she? I don't know. Whatever.
All right. The difference being is that dragons exist in Blackstone Dragons, so anything is possible.
Edmund's dead. Can we emphasize that poor Eloise, which is one of the younger sisters, witnessed it?
Who's like 8? She's like 8 at the
She's
time.
8. And Anthony still has the gall to be like, I'm the only one really affected by my dad's death.
He's
like,
not the only one very affected. He just thinks
he's the most
affected in a
affected.
different way.
Okay,
let's
you know
talk
who's
about
affected
this.
in a different way? It's Eloise.
Yeah, Eloise absolutely needs therapy. Justice for Eloise. However, Anthony now has to take on, because it's primogeniture, he has to essentially become a surrogate father to his siblings. And in some ways, I mean, this is going to sound super creepy, this phrasing of it, but I can't think of a better way. A surrogate husband to his mom, because he has to take on the role of the Viscount. He inherits everything. So he has to take care of his entire family at the age of 18. So not only has he lost his dad, but he now has to assume this immense responsibility while he's still essentially a child.
Yeah.
2, I would like to emphasize the idea, like Anthony internalized, it says in the prologue that he has and he by the time he was 5 years old, he was like, yeah, my relationship with my dad is better because we've had a longer relationship, which is theoretically true. None of the other kids are gonna know Edmund longer than Anthony. But there's beliefs that you internalize as a kid, and they're not that they never really get in the way of much stuff. So they don't there's no reason for you to question them or interrogate them later on. In a much less severe way, it was when one of my best friends growing up her family had a boat that they took out on the Delaware River. And I was like, Mom, why can't we get a boat? And Mom was like, well, because she and her brother go to public school. And obviously and at the time we were going to private school, which is obviously,
costs money.
And it costs money. And, so the explanation there was, well, they can afford a boat because they don't have this other expense. But in my head, I was like, oh, so they had to sign a contract at the local, with the boat dealer, that they would send their kids to the local elementary school. But then I was like, but their boat dealer, because one time I went to their boat dealer with them. I don't know why, but their boat dealer was in New Jersey. So I was always confused. I was like, why would this New Jersey boat dealer make them go to the local public school in Pennsylvania? But I never interrogated that until I was straight up 20 years old. I literally had a brain blast when I was 20, and I was like, oh, that's what that meant. And I thought about that. It wasn't I'd never thought about that, but in that 15-year time period. But I just never questioned it. I was like, yes, the boat dealer made them sign a contract to send their child to public school, and that's why they got a boat.
Wow. Yeah.
So
I didn't even realize that's
I'm
what
just
you
saying
thought.
Anthony having this whole complex about how he has the best relationship with his dad is not unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It's just Anthony's ability to just completely, I don't know how to describe it. Anthony's just complete ability to even consider that other people might have the same feelings he has when faced with the same situation is just baffling. I feel like that's the first step of that's children realizing that illusion exists, right? That's the first step, is realizing other people can have reactions that are the same as yours. The next step is realizing they could react differently. You know what I mean? I feel like he hasn't even gotten to that preliminary level because of all of this, because Anthony takes his dad's death so badly and looks up to his dad as the best person and man ever. He can't imagine surpassing his dad in any way, including age. So his dad died when he was 38. Therefore, Anthony will die before he is 38.
Yeah. Also, I think it's really funny that 18-year-old Anthony is wow, 38 is so old.
Yes, I was going to say that. Because he's wow, it's so obscene that my parents are still having kids. His mom is pregnant and she's 36 at that point. He's it's so obscene that my parents are still having kids at this point. It's kind of embarrassing. But then he's the doctors are baffled how such a young, virile man could die from abuse.
Yeah.
Which is it? Is he decrepit and too old to be having kids? Or
well, I can't understand 18-year-olds looking at his pregnant mom and being all right, enough is enough, Violet.
Yeah.
Let's simmer down.
Yeah, I guess the age gap is huge, but
yeah, their kids aren't evenly spaced. Like
Yeah.
some of them are pretty far apart.
But Anthony is like, quote, he hadn't, of course, shared his thoughts about his own mortality with anyone else, not even his brothers, end quote. So if you haven't ever told anyone else about this, why would you assume that they can't possibly also be not telling you how they're feeling? Like if you had like one-on-one mandatory therapy where like you're the therapist with each of your family members, like no.
That's the thing. Okay, so one, my response to that is everyone's a little bit narcissistic, particularly in grief. When you're
Sure.
feeling, I feel like intense emotions, particularly painful ones, you are always gonna assume that like the way you're feeling, like no one can understand the way you're feeling. And listen, in some respects, Anthony, none of his siblings can understand how he's feeling because again, all of them have different relationships with their father. But B, like Anthony has like his father's death impacts him in a completely different and entirely tangible way than the rest of his siblings. Like their lives don't really change in any way besides like having a dead dad, obviously. But like Anthony's whole life gets flipped upside down. So he does have a completely different the impact of his father's death is completely different than any of his other siblings.
I don't think that's what he's saying though. Like he never complains about like having to be the patriarch or whatever. Like he's just saying that I just had the most special, and sure, I can forgive him that. However, this is not the only context in which Anthony proves himself completely incapable of considering that others can have a deep, like, internal world.
Everybody's a little narcissistic, okay? Like everybody assumes that the way they're feeling is the like first time anyone has ever felt this way and that there's no way anyone can understand, and like everybody does that to an extent. Some people less than others. I don't know. Anthony needs therapy. And by the end of the book, he does unpack his toxic masculinity. That's another thing that is very strong with Anthony here, and something that I think Jonathan Bailey did really well in the first season of Bridgerton. Everyone was like, oh, Anthony's such a dick. And I'm like, no, my friends. Anthony is suffering under the patriarchy. That is what's happening here. Anthony needs therapy. Unfortunately, therapy doesn't really exist in the early 19th century, but he'll get there eventually. Oh, an important thing I wanted to ask. So I listened to the first time I read this, I read it like text with my eyes. This time I listened to it, and the audiobook narrator, and I'm pretty sure they also do this in the show, they say his name Anthony, like Tony.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
And then, but we've been saying Anthony, and that's how it's spelled. It's spelled Anthony, TH.
I was gonna ask. Is it? I was gonna ask, is that like a British thing? They always pronounce Anthony. Honestly,
I think it is a British thing.
I like that name a lot better, frankly. But
I feel like it's like Anthony in. It sounds. Here's my thing. Anthony, I think, sounds better in an American accent, and Antony sounds better in a British accent. That's my thing. Like Antony.
I disagree.
Like I feel really... like Antony, like it sounds weird to me in American accent. It doesn't sound nice.
Maybe, but Anthony, I just always hated the mouthfeel of that. Like I just didn't like it. I just always had really negative associations with that name for some reason.
I just feel like you got to pronounce it the British way for me to, in a British accent, like for me to in any way. Like
I think there might have been a kid in my like third grade class who threw up in class named Anthony. Maybe that's where it comes from.
Here's the thing though.
It's not his fault.
Here's a dangerous thing. Oh my God. You're associating it with puke kid.
No, I just yeah.
Here's the thing though. When it's Anthony, when it's spelled Antony, there is a very big danger that the kid is going to be nicknamed Tony. I just feel like if you are nicknamed Tony, your destiny is to become either a mobster or an Italian baker.
Either of those are great options. Like what? What are you talking about? Are you telling me you wouldn't want to be an Italian baker? I mean, sure, they have to get up really early, but like other than that.
That's the thing. I would want to like maybe be like related to an Italian baker so I can like come into the shop and get free stuff all the time. Like a cousin. I don't want to like be in any way involved in that family business, but like I would like the benefit.
So, okay, we pretty much finished up with Anthony Boy. He's, been stewing for the past, like he's 28 present day, right? It's been like 10 years. Convinced
29?
Yeah. Convinced that he's going to die by the time he's 38. And I guess wait, when does this happen? I guess I'm skipping. Like, but he says to his brothers, he's like, all right, it's time for me to get married. And in his head, he's like, all right, my criteria are that the girl is reasonably smart, reasonably hot, and I definitely won't fall in love with her. And I'm just wondering how I'm just wondering how it's never clear how he like is planning to predict or define the final criteria, because like if someone's reasonably hot and reasonably smart, like how are you going to know off the bat that you'll definitely never fall in love with them,
I think you just get that vibe. I don't
I
know.
guess
Like, I feel like I've
so.
definitely met people and I'm like, yeah, I like you, but like, there's absolutely no way that like I'm ever going to feel. Also,
I guess
romance
so.
reasons, Rachel. Romance reasons.
Sure,
That's
but like it
why.
doesn't, given his like effect on his like reaction to Kate, I'm just not clear on why she wouldn't fit that criteria
Yeah.
from what he's thinking, like
Yeah.
consciously. Subconsciously, obviously a different story, but like it just seems like paradoxical that either he's like admitting that he's into her, or like, you know what I mean? Like by saying that he
Yeah.
can't, yeah, whatever.
He
Um,
by reasonably hot, he means like I want to be able to get it up around her.
sure. So like he can't get it up around Kate? Like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, so he's in whites and he's telling his brothers Benedict and Colin that he's going to get married, and Benedict is tipping his chair back, and against specifically his mother's wishes. And I was just like, it's Stefan. Like, Benedict is Stefan. Anthony is also like, he's just like he's just like such a dummy that he like believes that he's not going to fall in love. But it's also like kind of rude to like purposely marry someone who like
Oh
you'll never
yeah,
fall in love
for
with. And I
sure.
guess, listen, I guess we should acknowledge now that like this book was written in 2000, and like historical romance looked a lot different in 2000 than it does now, and just the world in general looked a lot different in 2000. Also, it's like taking place in the Regency era, so like
Yeah.
most aristocrats didn't marry for love,
That's what I
like
was gonna
in the
say.
Regency era.
Yeah. It's not like he's robbing her of like, at least
Yeah.
from his perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, when we criticize things, like, acknowledge that like we understand this. Like, we
Yeah.
understand that this is all happening within the context of both when it's taking place and when it's written.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. But I'm just like, it's Anthony, like, it's kind of rude.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't believe so. Anthony is like a rake with a capital R. So now we have, if you've watched the show, you know this, or if you've read these books before, you know that each chapter begins with a little excerpt from Lady Whistledown Society Papers, which is like a Regency gossip column. It's like Us Weekly. And Lady Whistledown begins her first entry in this with a note about how Anthony is a rake with a capital R. And in case you aren't familiar with the historical romance lingo, a rake is fuckboy, basically. It's a Regency fuckboy. And I just never really believe that Anthony is a true rake. Like, especially having read
Mm.
other historical romance. And like Anthony, like, yes, he's like fucked many people, but like he's still super responsible and like takes care of his family, and like he only ever has like one, like he has like a mistress, you know what I mean? It's not like he's going like to the brothels or like seducing like debutantes in hallways like every night, like different one like every night at the ball. Like he literally just has like one girlfriend at a time.
No, sure. But we explicitly get that like he's like, oh, I'm 28 now. I've like slowed down a little bit. Back in my like early and mid 20s, I would have like multiple mistresses and also be like hooking up with other people and like going out every night. So like, yeah, he slowed down a little bit for sure. But like, I don't know. I think the
I don't know. I just
show
never believed that.
definitely.
I was like, okay, Anthony. Even in the show, he has one girlfriend who he like wants to marry.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
guess.
where is he a rake? Exactly. Where is he a fuckboy? Like, I mean, he's a fuckboy, but he's not like a slutty fuckboy. You know what I mean? He's
He's
a
an
fuckboy like
older.
in
Yeah,
personality.
sure.
Whatever.
Sure.
Okay, so now we meet his love interest slash the woman who's going to hit him over the head with her proverbial pan. It's like Tangled.
What? No,
That's what
yeah.
I just like imagine. Like that's what happens to Anthony.
Yeah.
He just gets like knocked over the head with like a cast iron saucepan enough times that he finally like is like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm a dick sometimes. And then he's like, I cannot be a dick. I'm allowed. Yeah. So we meet the Sheffields, Kate, Edwina, and Mary. Mary and Edwina are mom and daughter, and Kate is Edwina's half sister and Mary's stepdaughter, but they're all BFFs. And I really like their relationship. I think it's really cute. Like they're all super close and tight. And there's no like dumb stepmother
Yeah,
angst.
for sure. Yeah. Mary and Edwina look alike, and Edwina is super small and super hot.
And
And
blonde.
Kate, yeah, and blonde. And Kate is taller and just, pretty, but like average looking. But compared to Edwina, which she's constantly compared to, she's like, obviously nowhere near top.
Well, no, she's so Anthony acknowledges later that she is more than average looking. He's like, yeah, Kate is actually pretty hot. It's just
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Edwina
yeah.
is so hot. Like she's not average
Yeah, I said
looking
she's
though. Like
pretty.
she's better than that. Like she's
She's pretty, but
yeah.
compared to Edwina. And so they're all vaguely poor because their dad died, which I like. It's better than some kind of like infuriating thing about like an on-tail or like an on-tailed relative or like some kind of like scam. I always hate that whenever there's like some kind of like super unfairness in the way they got poor, I always spend the rest of the book like stewing about it. But so they're just like vaguely poor, and that's why they could only afford to come to London for the season once. So Edwina is like almost 18. Kate is almost 21. So they're both there for the first time. And Kate, in her head, she's like, I'm definitely never getting married, or like at least not to someone in London. Like maybe I'll find someone back home. But my purpose here is to like get Edwina married off to like as good of a rich person as possible.
I mean, I understand from like they don't have dowries, so like Kate's like I'm not hot enough to make up for the fact that I don't have a dowry, but Edwina is.
Yeah.
But I'm like the idea that someone at 21 was a spinster is like fucking insane. Like I'm like well into spinsterhood.
Yeah. The aristocracy needed all benefits of age they could get, except like having kids in your teens is not actually like that beneficial health wise. So
No.
it's like why one of the reasons the infant mortality rate was so high, and not just infant mortality rate, but like maternal mortality rate.
So a question about Edwina. Do you think that Julia Quinn gave Edwina such an ugly name, like to make up for the fact that she's that hot? Sorry if your name's Edwina, like but like I just feel like it's kind of an objectively any of those names that are like a man's name but you just add like a at the end, I just feel like are like
No, for me it's the ween. It's the ween element. That's
Edwina.
Do you think that part of the reason Anthony hones in on Edwina is because it reminds him of his dad's name, Edmund, Edwina?
No, because Anthony's sitting in his club and he's like, who's the hottest chick this season? And his brothers are like, oh, it's Edwina Sheffield. And he's like, I know, I'm going to marry her.
That sounds like Edmund.
No.
I could name our son Edmund and tell her it's named after her.
What is this, like some weird, like reverse, like Freud thing?
He just likes that name. I don't know.
Where like the boy wants to fuck his dad and like not his mom.
Yeah. Kate is less pretty than Edwina. She's also less like refined. Like I don't know how to describe it. Like
graceful. Like graceful. She's sort of clumsy and she's like abrupt. She doesn't know how to like play the game of the ton. You know what I mean? She's like
she always
like,
walks
very straightforward
fast.
And like yeah, she walks fast.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, my girl. She like steps on people's feet when she dances, like that kind of thing.
So we open up. Edwina's reading Lady Whistledown, and they're talking about Anthony and how he's such a slut. And Kate is like, you can't marry that guy. And Edwina, like a week ago, we're told, like announced to a whole party that like she would not marry anyone unless like Kate approved of them. So like all like Edwina suitors are like trying to ham themselves up to Kate to like get her approval. And Kate is like, you can't even consider Lord Bridgerton because he is a slut. And Mary is like, not that it's any of your business, but most men have mistresses. And I'm like, is this why later on when like Anthony basically explicitly says that he intends to like cheat on Edwina, that nobody questions it? Nobody's like, oh yeah, that's fucked. That like, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, yeah, that's like whatever, normal. I'm like, I recognize that they're in Regency England and they're also poor and women and they can't get jobs and they're not even like working class women. So like they have no way of supporting themselves and they're in an untenable position. But I'm also like,
yeah,
I don't love that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that is something that's really, I think, is interrogated a lot more in these early historicals than in maybe a lot of the historicals that are going around now.
Right.
Because a quality of a good historical is that it interrogates gender. Like you cannot, regardless of whether you're writing an MF historical, an FF historical, an MM historical, whatever, you have to acknowledge how gender like affects power dynamics and like everything in your world. And this book like does that, and I think is a lot more like honest about it than and I mean, listen, I'm not dunking. There are a lot of people who are like, modern historicals are too feminist and like there's no way like these people would be thinking like this and doing this. And I'm like, well, like, you know, that's not true. Everyone wasn't like a sexually deprived, stick up their ass like dummy like Georgette Heyer would have you believe.
It's also like not the point, you know?
Yeah. Also, Jane Austen was the son. Like everyone quotes Jane Austen, but like Jane Austen was like a fucking countryside gal who was the son, who was the daughter, the like unmarried daughter of a vicar. Like Jane Austen was a prude. I love her, but she was a fucking prude. Like, of course, she's not gonna write like anything more than like perfectly morally like wonderful characters. Anyway, my point is that I think that these early books are a lot more honest with how they interrogate that and like the reality than some books. I think there are some books that are like afraid to do that nowadays.
Yeah, and they just kind of like ignore it, which honestly is like fine because I feel like a lot is ignored. A lot has to be ignored. Like I remember when I was reading these for the first time, kept like just like jumping on every little tiny detail that I was like, this isn't accurate. Like I don't think this is accurate, and like looking it up. But then you just like eventually are like, yeah, that's like not.
No.
It's written in the time it's written, and it's not supposed to be historically accurate. It's
Yeah, no.
fiction in this setting. Like yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I mean, and I like a lot of the times I prefer my historical romances to not like to just like let ladies be ladies. You know what I mean? To like sometimes I'm just like I don't want to like be
Wanna talk about the
reminded of like
mistresses,
how
yeah.
much the world sucked 200 years ago and how much it still
Exactly.
sucks. Like sometimes I just want to read a
Right.
nice. Also, like a historical is like Anthony has fucking washboard abs and he's like 6 foot tall and he has all his teeth and he's like young and super rich.
Right.
Like that's so like that historical man doesn't exist. Like
Yeah.
how are all these like 50 hot like 30-year-old dukes like walking around like ready to give
Yeah.
out titles to like wash maids?
Yeah. No, and honestly, like I said this in a different I can't remember what book we were reading when I like thought this, but like I generally just prefer the misogyny to be like unstated. Like I don't need
Yeah.
a character, especially one that we're supposed to like to even like reference. Like I don't know. I just don't need
Yeah,
that.
that's the thing. I mean like I don't mind like the rake TM is a very common like hero in historical romance. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't really, I'm like, whatever, like get your slut on. Like, as long as you don't sleep with anyone while you're with the heroine,
They all
like,
like
I don't care.
definitely have STDs. That's what I'm always
Yeah, yeah,
thinking.
yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the most historically inaccurate thing is that like none of
Right.
these men have syphilis.
Right.
Uh,
You just
which
don't
is
find out until later on, so it's not relevant to the storyline.
anyway. Kate also has a dog. And his
Oh
name is
yeah.
Newton, and he is a corgi, which I don't think
Purebred.
actually existed at the time. I think I looked
Wait.
this up when I first read this book, and I don't think corgis existed, but I don't care because he's cute and like chaos. Like Newton is just like pure chaos.
Yeah, yeah, they weren't recognized until 1920s.
Yeah. Like it was the
Whatever.
British royal family, I'm pretty sure, that like made them a thing. Anyway, I love that she has apparently he's named after Newton, a
Yeah.
physicist.
Uh-huh.
So is this Julia Quinn trying to tell us that Newton the corgi is actually a time traveler? You
What?
know? Because
Oh,
he
yeah.
didn't exist. He's like there 100 years early.
It's
He's named
true.
after a physicist. Like I feel like that's a little Easter egg. Newton is a time traveler. Confirmed.
Definitely.
I will not be taking questions or criticisms of this theory at the time. In fact, it's no longer a theory. It's a
It's
proven
canon.
statement. It's canon. Julia Quinn, feel free to like publicly acknowledge that as canon, but I also don't need your approval. Like I say it's canon.
Yeah. So, it's time for them to all go to some ball. I don't remember which ball, a ball. And while there, as usual, Edwina is like always has a dance partner, but Kate is like off to the side by herself. When who should come over? Oh, Edwina's dancing with Anthony, right?
Yes. Kate is standing in the corner, brooding, because Anthony and Edwina are dancing together, and she's like, he is a fuckboy. He needs to get away from my sister. And then who walks over? But
Anthony number 2,
number
aka
3, actually.
but to Kate it's Anthony number 2 because she has like a double take. She's like, "Who? What?" She like didn't know there were like that many Bridgertons so that they all look exactly alike. Um, it is Colin, and Colin is coming over to I don't know what, just like troll, because he's like talking. Him and Kate have like a little bit of banter, and then he's like, "Oh, let's go get some lemonade to get away from Mary." And basically, Kate does not mince words. She's like, "I really just do not want your brother anywhere near my sister." And remember that Anthony told Colin like the day before that he's targeting Edwina.
Sounds so sinister.
It is sinister. And can I just mention, I know this is like an artifact of these books, like the time period or whatever, but like when Anthony is listing his criteria, like that she's like, you know, smart, pretty, not fall in love. He's like, yeah, she needs to be smart because the last time I made the mistake of trying to engage a chit just out of the schoolyard in conversation, she like, you know, could barely string two words together. I'm like, why? You're 28. Why are you talking to chits out of the schoolyard? Like, what? Dude. So
Yeah,
it's
I
a little
don't
bit
like
predatory.
that is
And
something
Weena
that
is 17.
I was like, that's Anthony. I know you need to unlearn this, but like, yeah, I don't. Well, the fact that he just like paints debutantes in a group, like he's just really is like
Right.
a dick. But yeah, also like this whole time, like Edwina's 17.
I know.
Like she's 17. There's a 12-year age gap. She's not even like legally an adult.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm just very creeped out by that.
Yeah, like, I'm sorry. If you want people with a similar conversational ability as you, why don't you look at people your own age? Like, literally.
Or just like in general, and like men in historicals are always like,
Yeah.
women are like so dumb to talk to. Like, I don't like talking to them. And I'm like, well, maybe if you like let them go to fucking school and like didn't ostracize them anytime they tried to talk about something besides the weather, you'd be
Right.
able to have a good conversation with them, dude.
Right.
Like,
God, yeah.
they're like, oh, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, like, God.
Yeah. So basically Colin is like, I see an opportunity to troll. This is gonna be hilarious.
I love it. Like, Kate is
Yeah.
just boldly shit talking his brother to his face, which is just wow, so bold. And then Colin is just full of shit. Like he's just like standing there with a shit eating grin on his face. He's like, oh, I can make a whole lot of chaos with this.
Yeah. So Colin like walks away and he goes and finds Anthony and he's like, hey, dude, you know that girl that you want to get with? Remember how like her sister's opinion is the deciding factor here? I was just talking to her sister and, you know, she's like never had a guy look twice at her. She's like this shy aging spinster and she could not stop talking, like saying enough nice things about you.
No. He specifically does not say
She could not stop
that she was
talking
saying
about
nice
you.
things. He just says she couldn't stop talking about you. And Anthony has his like head up his ass. And it's like, well, obviously she was talking about how hot I am and how rich I am.
You'll have no trouble winning her over. She's probably never received attention from a man such as you. So Anthony like strolls over and he's like waiting for Kate to approach. And then in his head, he's like,
No. Colin sees Kate. He's like, oh, look, there she is. And then Colin like bowls his way through the crowd. He's like, get out of the way.
Yeah. And so Anthony is like sizing her up and he's like, oh, I heard she was tall, like much taller than her sister. Like she's so tall. But then he's like, she was no ape-leading Amazon. Only when compared with Edwina, who barely reached 5 feet. And you know what? I think I found a new favorite nickname for myself. Thank you so much for that, Julia. I really appreciate that. And thank you also, Julia, for giving me more data points with which to fight back against the gaslighting that somehow being tall is like an advantage in like as a woman. This is like not that we need it. And we know that she considers 6'1" tall for a man since Anthony is 6'1" and he's considered tall. So
that is objectively tall. 6'1" is tall.
I understand, but that's like tall. You know what I mean?
No,
like
Kate is like supposed to be like 5'8".
Here's the thing: by the standards, yes, by the average man in America is like 5'8". So yes, it's objectively tall. By the standards of a romance novel, they're always like 6'4", 6'5" minimum, right? The fact that she considers that as like tall, like what am I then? Because I'm only like an inch shy of that. I'm a girl, so.
You know, Kate is like my height.
It's all the casual heightism. I know heightism isn't a real thing. I'm not comparing it to like whatever. I'm just saying I would not be so adamant about this if every time I like mention it, people weren't immediately jumping down my throat to be like, no, what do you mean? It's girls that don't like short boys. Okay, no.
Well, it's like that Netflix. It was a movie, Tall Girl, and how everyone was like making fun of that because they're like, oh, she's acting like she's like, and like, yeah, I mean, I didn't watch that movie, but like from what I saw of it, I do think they like hammed it up a lot. But like, I was like, people were complaining about that to me, and I was like, I mean, I don't know, like my sister was 6 foot like at the age of 12, and like that is like definitely accurate to her experience. Like, just because y'all like are short and like are like normal, like all of my friends are like normal height, they're like 5'4".
Exactly. Just remember this when you read The Hating Game. I feel guilty about that from the beginning because Like, one of my good friends is like on the very short, like as tall as I am, she's short. And I know it's always been a source of insecurity for her. I'm not trying to, I always felt guilty for like playing that down. Like, I recognize that can definitely be an issue for people. But I think the difference is that like it's never other people. Like the thing in the hating game, she's like complaining as if the fact that she got attention and got pushed in swings and got like pulled around in the wagon, as if that's like bad, like what made it bad. It's never other people like
Yeah.
actually treating you badly. Sure, maybe there's like casual teasing, but like it's not like literal. I don't know. Like it's just
Yeah. You're
you
never
don't get
really
the
at
things
like a
in books where
social
they're like
disadvantage. Like in
right,
terms of like romantic relationships or like other stuff
right.
like that, like being short as a woman is not is never something that's necessarily really gonna like take you out of the running.
Sure. And for some reason, like I feel like no one ever contests that it's like bad for a man to be short. No one ever like is jumping to the defense of like that's not a hard position to be in, you know? So I don't
Yeah.
understand why there's just like the constant onslaught of gaslighting in the other direction. I just
Yeah.
don't get it. I guess it's because models exist, but like actors, male actors are short. Like, sure, if you want to go down that fight, like, no.
Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like the big models of today or like what. And I recognize like social media definitely influences this, but like Kendall Jenner, Gigi Hadid, Bella Hadid, they're all like, I think Kendall Jenner is maybe like 5'10. Gigi Hadid is like 5'7. Like she's my height.
Sure,
Like none
sure,
of them are like, none of them are, my point is none of them are astronomically tall. So I'm like, even
sure.
like the big models of today, like you're still taller than them.
Sure. And my point is like all that's irrelevant. If you're super fucking hot, it doesn't matter. Like your other characteristics
Yeah.
become irrelevant. Like Carly Kloss is like what, like 6'2", but like, okay, I'm never gonna be Carly Kloss. It doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
not really trying to dig on myself. I'm just saying like it's the same thing as like saying, oh, you're 5'6" as a guy. Why do you have a problem with that? Tom Cruise is 5'6" and look at him. All the ladies are all over him.
Yeah. It's
Like,
like, yeah, but he's
no.
Tom Cruise. He
Right,
also has the
exactly.
power of Scientology behind him, which is like a whole other thing.
I don't even know if it's Tom Cruise. Some whatever. There's a
No, Tom
male
Cruise is very
celebrities in
short.
general are short. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
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 all
yeah.
of the male
Anyway,
celebrities.
that's my rant for today. Anyway, just for the record, Kate is no ape bleeding Amazon, so you don't have to worry about that.
She's like 5'7". She's like
Yeah,
she's my height. And I'm like, I'm taller than average, but like no one has ever like looked at me and been like, holy shit, you're so tall.
right. Okay, so so as predicted, Kate comes over and Anthony's like all ready for her to be like fawning all over him. And instead, she's like, I fucking hate your guts. Stay away from my sister.
Yeah. Well, he
Um
he makes the huge mistake of being
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
you are just as beautiful as your sister." And Kate immediately is like, "This guy is full of elephant shit. Like he is full of like the biggest doo-doo on the planet is what Anthony Bridgerton is made out of." And to Anthony's credit, in his internal monologue, he does realize he was like, "That was a really fucking stupid thing to say. That was the one compliment she never would have like believed."
Right,
Like
right.
he's like, so to Anthony's credit, he does realize that he fucked up. To
Yeah.
Kate's credit, she doesn't let him get away with it.
Right. And he basically tries to like cover for it, doesn't work. And so Colin had asked Kate to dance, but for some reason he like makes up an excuse. He's like, "Oh, sorry, the little boys' room is calling." And she's like, "Oh, that's okay. Like I don't care." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, but you have to dance with someone. Like it would just be so rude of me not to provide someone to dance with you. Anthony, why don't you dance with her?" And Anthony's first thought is like when hell freezes over, but then Kate is like, "No, absolutely not." And
Kate
Anthony is
is like,
like,
when three hell
yeah.
over.
And Anthony is like, "Wait a second."
Anthony's like, and I took that personally.
Yes. And then he literally drags her onto the dance floor, which is like top tier Edward behavior, like psycho,
Edward Cullen,
just
yeah.
completely unhinged.
But Anthony, so they dance and they're just roasting each other back and forth the whole time. Kate is like, I fucking hate you. She stomps on his foot accidentally and on purpose multiple times. And Anthony, at this point, he hasn't fully consciously realized this, but I realized it for him. I was like, Anthony has a kink for women who roast him. I was
Oh
like, that's
yeah.
what he wants. He wants someone who's just constantly, who's going to be roasting him nonstop for the rest of his life. That's what he
Oh
needs.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
for
Kate
sure.
provides.
Yeah, what does that remind me of? What is that from? Where that's like the thing? What am I thinking of?
I don't know. That's
Oh,
definitely a
Pride and
trope.
Prejudice.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
It's
Well,
like
this
very
is
strong Jane Austen vibes throughout this, for
no,
sure.
this is very much, I think, like Sense and Sensibility meets Pride and Prejudice. Because it's like the sisters and their mom.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I like it better because the problem with Sense and Sensibility, exactly like I was saying earlier, they have this like annoying. It starts out with just like the brother's wife just being a total bitch and like worming them out of their inheritance. And that's just, it took me so long to get past that. I don't even know if I've gotten through the whole book. I'm gonna be honest. It's kind of embarrassing to admit. I've seen all like the film adaptations, but like the book is just so frustrating. I just want to like punch them. But that's why I like that they're just like vaguely, that's why I like that they're just like vaguely poor here. Like there's no like evil relative machinations to get me fired up. Another thing, Anthony is like, Kate is like, Edwina is never going to go for you if I don't approve. And like, I will never approve. And Anthony is like, I thought Edwina was an adult and she could make her own decisions. And I'm like, sir, she's 17. She's quite literally not an adult.
Actually, well, if we want to be technical,
Be
Kate's
21.
not an adult either.
Yeah. Well, no, she's 21 at this point because she says she's.
That's her birthday was like overnight. Yeah, she turned 21 overnight. But yeah, technically at the beginning of this season, Kate was not an adult either.
Yeah.
By which I mean she can. Well, that's the thing. It's weird because like at 18, like Anthony can inherit at 18 because he's technically an adult. But like, were his father still alive, he wouldn't be able to get married without his parents' permission until he was 21. Like there's like, it's like a weird, it's the same thing we have now, I guess, in the US. Drinking, like you're an adult with AT, but there are certain things you can't do till you're 21. Anthony like hears that Kate doesn't want him to marry Edwina, and he's like, there is nothing more that rogues like than a challenge. And I'm like, yeah, boo, but the challenge is not going to be marrying Edwina. It's going to be winning over Kate, you dummy. Like, you don't even see, like, the frying pan is swinging towards your head, and you don't even see it coming.
You're not even going to duck. Yeah. So, flash to the next morning, and Kate is, like, admiring all the seemingly like hundreds of flower bouquets that Edwina gets every morning from her various
super
suitors.
Hot.
Yeah, she's super hot. But the joke is that Edwina has the aforementioned hay fever, so she can't actually like smell any of them. So Kate gets them all, and she's like, haha, I scammed them all. But we find out that Kate has never gotten flowers like for herself before. Like no one's ever given her flowers. Yeah. So Edwina is out on like a little curricle ride with goofball Nigel Burbrook. So she's not in the house when Anthony shows up, and he's like, where's Edwina? And Kate's like, over my dead body. And then this is the beginning of the choking fantasies, because Kate is like, if she had been a less controlled sort of woman, her hands would surely have been wrapped around his throat. And that's just like one of many, just the start.
But they both like, there's definitely
both.
multiple points in which Anthony is like, he reached out his hand and like measured her throat with his finger.
Right. And then that's why it makes it extra disappointing that the sex is just like so basic. Like I don't think he never even goes down on her like once.
No. There is a hint of kink in the epilogue in the second epilogue in which they're talking about tying each other up. But yeah, I was like, I want, and I mean, I don't expect, like, Julia Quinn is definitely, like, I wouldn't say Julia Quinn is, like, spicy. Like, there's on-page sex, but, like, Julia Quinn is not a steamy author. Like, she's more known for, like, her dialogue and her humor and, like, situational comedy and stuff.
Sure.
But, yeah, this is not a very spicy book. There's on-page sex. It was spicy. Again, the first time I read it,
oh, yeah,
I was like, oh, what is this? I haven't felt this way since I started reading Lillian James smut in the 7th grade. Like, the feelings are back. And then, like, since then, I read, like, much hotter books. But that's why this is a good gateway. Like, if you've never read it, you would read this and be like, oh, this is a spicy book. Oh, it's definitely. Like people who read fucking, like, ACOTAR, like A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah.
And like there's like one sex scene in that like 600-page second book, and everyone's like, oh, chapter 55, it's so hot. And I'm like, yeah, it's hot, but like chill out, guys. Like
you realize there's like, an entire
genre. The bar is low. Your bar is so low.
That's hilarious. And then they make TikToks about like how all they read is smut, but like the only books shown are like ACOTAR. And I'm like, not to like dig. That would have been me like a year and a half ago, probably. But.
And listen, Sarah J. Maas, the Court of Silver Flames is fully smut. Like every other scene is a sex scene in that book.
Sure. I'm not digging her ability.
No. That's what I'm saying. Sarah J. Maas, like once she like freed herself from the shackles of YA, she was like flexing her like muscles and like she's like, oh, I'm ready. It's like that Jim Carrey gif where he's like clacking really quickly on the keyboard.
Yeah. When did I read that book? Because I still think that sex scene is like really hot. I'm gonna be honest. Like even though it's only one. Yeah.
Oh no, it is. No, the sex scene.
I know, but I'm saying it almost makes up for the like quality over quantity.
There is a lot of like mini in that book scenes of like foreplay where they're like touching each other, but like nothing happens, but like the sexual tension is really high. Anyway,
Anthony's there, and Mary comes downstairs and spies an opportunity. And Kate assumes that Mary is like trying to undermine her and get Edwina and Anthony together.
Anthony brings Kate flowers.
Oh, yeah.
So he's brought flowers for Edwina, and originally it looks like one big bouquet. So like Kate just assumes it's like one big bouquet of tulips or something for like Edwina, but then he pulls them apart and there are 3. And he brought one for Mary, one for Edwina, and one for Kate. And this is actually Anthony admits that he got this idea from Simon, who's the hero of the previous book, The Duke and I. But this is based on Julia Quinn's like real life experience. She's like, this is what my husband did. Like when he first met like my mom and my grandma, he like brought all 3 of them flowers. And like she was like, it was beautiful. Like, cause my grandma like hadn't gotten flowers since my grandpa died. And like, it was really cute.
That is cute.
And I was like, you go, Mr. Quinn, or I'm sorry, he's a doctor. So Dr. Quinn, like, you go, sir.
For
like,
sure. It
very
is cute.
smooth.
I don't like something about bringing it to the sister who's like also allegedly supposed to be getting married feels kind of patronizing though. But
yeah,
I don't know.
But Kate is very much, even though Kate's her sister, like I don't know, Kate, there's very much like, and this is openly acknowledged, like there's very much like a motherly component to Kate and Edwina's relationship.
Yeah. So Mary comes down and she's like, oh, Kate, it's time for Newton to go for a walk. Why don't you and Anthony take him for a walk and go find Edwina? Which is kind of like rude. If Nigel Burbrook was like anyone else, I feel like, why are you sending them out to like interrupt their date? But whatever.
He's really, poor Nigel Burbrook. In the books, he's just like a lovable idiot. They really did him dirty in the show. Like they really made him like an absolute monster in the fucking show. Like poor Nigel. He's just like a little, like, he's just a dummy. Like he's fine, he's harmless. And then they just like were like crank that shit up in the show. Like
Show Burbrook is never getting his happy ending with whichever Featherington.
No, I hope not. Yeah, he's supposed to marry one of the Featheringtons. Like, I hope she doesn't deserve that.
No, definitely not. But according to Anthony, Nigel Burbrook has, quote, more hair than wit. And Kate's like, he's going bald. And Anthony's like, if that doesn't prove my point, I don't know what will. So he's a little dummy.
They're also, so there's a lot of little moments in that before they leave for the walk. Before Mary comes down, they're sitting in the drawing room and Kate is like, oh, we're sitting unchaperoned. Like, oh no. And Anthony has like a moment of panic because like he thinks he's going to be forced into marriage. And I was like, oh, it's foreshadowing. Also, Newton is like barking at Mary outside because Newton loves Mary, but Mary doesn't like him. And Anthony is like, surely it's a mastiff. And I'm like, haha. Like, no, it's just a dumb little corgi. Also, I know this is very picky. And again, I swear to God, I'm not one of those like, this is historically inaccurate people. Like, I don't give a shit. But it really, justice for Kate in the fact that they have to keep specifying when they say Miss Sheffield that they mean Edwina, when Kate is the only Miss Sheffield. Nobody else gets to be Miss Sheffield. Kate is the oldest.
Right.
She's the only Miss Sheffield. So whenever someone says Miss Sheffield, unless they are specific, unless like they're talking to Edwina and she's the only one in the room with them and they're very clearly talking specifically to her and about her, Kate is the only Miss Sheffield the only person who ever gets to be Miss Sheffield until she gets married. Edwina is always Miss Edwina Sheffield. Always. So I'm always like, it just grinds my gears a little bit. Like, I'm like, Kate is not getting her rightful due as you want to talk about oldest sister injustice.
Right,
This is Kate. Like, Kate deserves to be the only Miss Sheffield. Let her have this one thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like the gag in 2005 Pride and Prejudice when the butler comes in and he's like, a Miss Bennet, a Miss Bennet, a Miss Bennet, and a Miss Bennet. It's like, So off they putz on their walk and like, it's all going pretty well. Kate's like enjoying the sun and Anthony's like, oh, she enjoys the sun, like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's like walking and he's just like stubbornly ignoring how like nice it feels to just like walk with her. He's like, wow, this is like really peaceful and soothing and like, wow, she's so hot. But he's like, this means nothing. This absolutely this doesn't mean anything. I also sympathize with Kate because when Mary's like forcing her to go on the walk with Anthony, she's like kind of mad that her daily alone walk is being interrupted. She's like, I like walking Newton to the park and because I can just like walk by myself and like think to myself. And like, I really vibe with that. I'm like, I too get annoyed when my daily alone time is interrupted.
I'm sure Newton would not object to 2 walks a day. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
But so she's like, "Oh, the sun feels so nice. I wish I could take my hat off, but I can't." And he's like, "Oh, well, you could push it up. Let me do it for you." And then he's like fidgeting. I don't know why she can't do it herself, but he's like fidgeting with it for her. I guess like to get them to touch. When Newton sees like a bird or something and like basically drags her down the lane and then like escapes.
Yeah.
And they have to like run pell-mell across the park to try to catch him. And they don't see him until he sees Eloisa, who is
No,
standing.
Edwina.
Edwina. Oh my God.
Edwina.
Fucking Edwina.
And
If
listen,
only
advice, friends, when chasing dogs or cats, remember, you are a distance hunter. So you will always be able to outlast them. You just have to follow them at a distance and eventually they'll get tired. You can just walk up to them. Remember this. You have the evolutionary advantage.
Indeed. Yeah. Humans are made for running.
For distance running.
Theoretically. Yeah. So Newton sees Edwina and he's really excited. He's like, "Oh, my other best friend, my other girl, whatever." He runs toward her and she's standing next to the river. And so she gets pushed into the river. And Anthony is like immediately furious and like starts blaming Kate. He has to like go in and get her. And she's like, you know, shivered to the bone. Nigel is there just like fluttering around, like head in a completely different, like alternate timeline. Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, everything will be chill. I just need to fix my curricle." And Anthony is like, "Do you know how to fix a curricle?" And Nigel's like, "You got me there, Lord Bridgerton."
So Anthony basically, he like borrows a curricle from one of his buddies and basically just ditches Kate and Nigel and is like, "I'll send someone back for you guys, but I'm taking Edwina." And
Yeah.
Kate
Well,
is
because
like
to be fair,
furious.
Edwina's like soaking wet and like shivering. And also Anthony thinks that Kate did it on purpose. He like blames her for doing
Oh,
it because
yeah,
Anthony still at this
yes.
point believes that like Kate, he's like, there's no way Kate isn't jealous of
That's what I'm
Edwina.
saying. This is instance number 2 of Anthony just like for some reason, Anthony's like, "Oh, I'm so devoted to my siblings. I like wouldn't want, I would, you know, I don't want anything but the best for them. I love them so much." But it's inconceivable that Kate, for all her wit and intelligence, was not at least a little jealous of her sister.
Yeah.
Anthony.
I
Come
get it.
on.
Here's my thing. Here's the way I see it is that is all part of Anthony's like needing to unlearn all these like super sexist views about women because he's like, "Oh, well, there's no way that these women whose only purpose is to compete for husbands could not be rivals. Like there's no way
I
they could have the healthy
guess.
relationship that I have with my siblings." And I think that's something that he has to unlearn. And he does unlearn it. Like he's eventually like, "Oh, yeah, Kate really loves her sister." And like, I don't know why I ever thought that she didn't.
It's just
Because at this point, he just thinks Kate's trying to sabotage Edwina's marriage prospects.
Yeah. I don't know.
While he's accusing Kate, though, Kate is like, "Hey, Newton, shake." And then
Oh,
Newton
yeah.
just like wiggles his little corgi butt and like gets Anthony soaking wet. And Anthony's like,
That's
"Are you
hilarious.
fucking kidding me?" And Kate is like,
There's a few things I didn't mention before. When they're like walking, for some reason, Kate's like, I forget why, but she has an image of being stranded on a desert island with Anthony, and she's like, "Oh yeah, he like wouldn't have a shirt on, and he'd be like super
Oh.
tan." She's like, "Why do I feel all hot and bothered?
Am I attracted to this?" No, because he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I like the sun too. Like I wish I didn't have to wear my hat." And she's like immediately, "Of course, that means I must
Oh,
picture
yeah.
him naked."
Yep. Also, Kate has like trouble running in her skirts instead of breeches when they're going to catch Newton. And once again, back to the women's beauty standards, making it difficult to like
Yeah.
be physically, whatever.
Which, to be fair to Regency dress, if any dress from like the 19th century would be easiest to run in, it would probably be Regency era because they're just like the bottoms are just like loose and flowy. But Kate specifically is like, "I can't hitch it up like above my ankles. And so that's why I can't run." So if it weren't for modesty, ooh.
I also wouldn't have thought that a corgi would be capable of pulling her as much as Newton does until I recently learned that they were herding dogs. Did you know that?
I feel like
corgis?
I did vaguely.
I definitely told someone that recently when I saw a corgi. I can't remember who though. Maybe it was mom or Stefan. But yeah, they're fucking herding dogs. Like
Nice.
they'll bite your ankles. They'll yank you if you're a sheep or human. Yeah. So
They all go home.
okay, they all go home.
Edwina's sick because, as we all know, Regency heroines cannot get wet without falling deathly ill.
Yeah.
It's just, they're not allowed.
Edwina and Kate like hear and like always have a very like Jane and Elizabeth dynamic if like Elizabeth was older because A, Edwina gets sick and is a super hot one. B, they're just like talking about like like, Kate is like, yeah, you don't want Anthony, like, stay away from him. He, like, won't treat you right. He'll, like, be cheating on you or whatever. Oh, she's like, rakes do not make good husbands, no matter what anyone says. And Edwina's like, oh, because you would know, because you've been married. And Kate just has to, like, backpedal, and, like, Kate's just, like, very sure in her opinions. And Edwina is
Yeah.
like, what? Why are you, like, constantly thinking that everyone is so, like, bad?
Yeah. Well, Kate, I mean, Edwina is definitely not as like naive and like nice as Jane. Like Edwina definitely
No.
sees through people's bullshit a lot easier. But it's also like at this moment when Kate is like, no, absolutely not. We're rejecting Anthony. And Edwina like questions her and like has a little bit of a backbone. Kate is like shook. She's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what the fuck? Like you didn't just
Right.
immediately take my word as Bible? Like what is going on? And Edwina's like, listen, bro. I have to marry rich. I know you guys keep saying that I don't have to marry rich and that like if I don't like anyone, we can all just go back to the country and it'll be fine. But like I recognize that I'm hot and we're poor, so I need to marry rich. And this very rich, very hot man is coming after me. So I feel like I can't discount him. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's fair, Edwina. I get it.
And this is where we get Kate pulling in Anthony a little bit, because I guess I'm going to jump the gun on this, but like at one point she's like, he's like, oh, like you're strong or something. And she's like, yeah, well, I've always had to be strong. Like I've always had to be strong for myself and Edwina. Like Edwina's strong too, but she's only ever had to be strong for herself. And then later Edwina's like, yeah, after they get together, Edwina's like, yeah, I'm so relieved that like it was such a burden, like a weight on me to have to basically like provide for this whole family.
Edwina doesn't explicitly say that, but Kate does realize. She was like, oh, Edwina was feeling the pressure a lot more than we thought she was. But Kate, during this conversation with Edwina, Kate does like realize that she's painted herself a little bit into a corner by like putting herself in this mother hen role as Edwina. Because Edwina kind of calls her out. She's like, you're supposed to be searching for a husband too. This is supposed to be your season too. And all you're doing is like fielding bachelors for me. And Kate is like, oh, like she just sort of has this like, this, not really a brain blast, like a brain pop, where she like realizes that she has like been limiting herself in the way that she like sees. She's like automatically counted herself out without even like giving herself a chance.
Yeah, definitely.
But she's still against Lord Bridgerton, and she's like, do not marry him. And Edwina's like, she's like, he's such a dick. Like he's such a dick to me. And Edwina's like, oh my God, like, did he kiss you? Like you said he wasn't on his best behavior. And I just like really love like Edwina just like coming in for the hot goss. She's like, oh like what happened? Like Edwina's just like sitting there, she's like with her 17 magazine like tucked under her knee and like her like cup of hot milk, and she's like, give me all the tea.
Yep, for sure. So Edwina is like too sick to go out, but the Sheffields have been invited to Bridgerton House for like a professional singer is going to come. And Mary, and Kate's like, there's no reason to go if Edwina can't go. Like, that's the only reason they invited us. And Mary's like, no, we're going. Like, get in the fucking car. And so they show up, and Kate immediately notices that Anthony is chatting up the like famous, beautiful opera singer who's supposed to perform. And she just like can't stop staring at him. And Mary's like, stop looking at him. I'm sure he wants nothing to do with you after that fiasco in Hyde Park. I'm like, that's a little harsh, Mary. Like, all right. Meanwhile, also when Kate gets to the house, she's like, oh, I'm too awed and by the size and grace of the stone building to make an intelligent comment, which is like very Pride and Prejudice. Meanwhile, Anthony is ruminating on the dream he had last night.
Sexy dream
about
Kate. And I love the description. He's like, it was a sex dream. Like, I didn't know who it was, but I was like, I was feeling it. And then I like saw her face and I was like, no.
And then he wakes up and does the classic conjugating Latin verbs to distract himself.
Yeah. And he's like checking the bed. He's like, did I come? Oh my God. It's going to be so embarrassing if I came.
And so now it's the night of the musical, and he's like brooding and watching out his front window, watching all the guests arrive. And he sees Kate, and she like tips her face up to look at Bridgerton House. And this is like the second, but not last time, that he's like, for some reason, like really, it's very like the rain scene in Twilight. He's like, oh, she doesn't wear makeup.
Yeah. He's like, God damn it. She's really fucking hot. Oh, yeah. You know, when he sees her, he literally almost fucking like passes out, so drops his drink. He like is holding like a drink in his hand. He's like, I had to put it down so that I didn't drop it. Like when he sees her. And I'm like, and yet you're sitting here being like, there's no way that I am attracted to Kate. Like, I of the higher mind. Like, oh, absolutely not. And I'm like, honey, you got a big storm coming.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's after the musical, and she's, like, watching with the opera singer, and in his head, he's like, "Okay, the best way." So the big twist here is that he used to hook up with this opera singer, and he's like, "All right, the best way to get her out of my head is just to, like, nothing if hooking up with Miss Opera Singer lady doesn't work, nothing will."
The
And
opera singer, by the way, looks like Kate. She's brown hair and brown eyes. Like, the description is like very similar. I'm like, Anthony
yeah.
has a type.
Yep. And so he's, like, plotting that, right? And Kate's like, "I just need some air, like, I'm sick of being around all these people." She just met Violet Bridgerton, which is Anthony's mom, and she thinks that she is, like, scheming with Mary to, like, set up Edwina and Anthony, and she's like, "I've had enough of this. No one's gonna
Yeah.
miss me."
Violet also invites them to her house party in the country at this
Oh,
point.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
So she goes out and sits into the hallway by herself when who does she, like, hear around the corner but Anthony and the opera singer, and she's like, "Fuck, this will be so embarrassing. He's gonna come out here and think that I'm, like, such a loser, even though I'm out here by choice." So she just, like, runs in the first door she finds, and she's like, "Oh, this is a nice study, nice desk."
She hears the door knob a rattling and she's like, oh shit. She runs to hide under the desk.
Yep. And I thought this was hilarious. Anthony comes in and he's like, sniffing the room, and he thinks he's going crazy because he smells like Kate. Because before he, like, commented that she smells like she smells like soap and flowers or
And
something.
lilies.
And
Yeah.
lilies. And he's like, "Oh my God, I came in here to get her out of my head, but, like, I'm hallucinating scents." Like,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so here's my thing about, so he's like going in there to hook up with, in the book, she's Maria Russo. In the show, it's Sienna Russo. And she has like much more of like a presence in the first season.
Mhm.
And I think like the first time I read it, like, I'm not sure whether it was just because the first time I read this, I hadn't read that much historical romance, or whether like the show just like scarred me by like making Anthony and Sienna have like such a like more intense relationship. But I just like was a lot less tolerant of Anthony wanting to hook up with anyone at this point. I was like,
Oh,
get
yeah.
her out of here. Absolutely not. Stop this. Like, you are not allowed to talk to other women. What are you doing? And also just feels like a little bit out of character, because like his character is that he's like super loyal. You know what I mean? Like, he's super loyal to his family. He's like very much like ride or die for the people that he cares about. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I just feel like it's a little shit that you're like telling the opera singer Maria in the book. He's like, well, like maybe we can start up like a long term. Like, she's like, I'm only looking for a partner if it's going to be long term. And he's like, yeah, well, so. And she's like, well, are you getting married? And he's like, well, you only don't keep a mistress like if you love your wife, implying that like there's no way. I mean, we already knew this, that there's no way he's going to love Edwina. And also explicitly, like, Kate has now explicitly heard that he plans on cheating
Mhm.
on Edwina. And I don't know whether this is just Anthony like talking, or like talking out of his ass.
Well,
But
yeah.
like in general, I was just like, I don't
No.
know, like Anthony cheating on his wife seems like a little bit out of character.
Yeah. No, and then he tries to, like, so I'll say this, but he tries to, like, gaslight Kate when she's like, "I heard
Yeah.
you say that." And he's like, "Oh, well, I only said that would be the case if I didn't love my wife. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think I wouldn't?" I'm like, "All right, sir."
But then but
Like,
he is very much like, well, it's obvious that she knows that I'm lying. You know what I mean? Like, it's very clear that like Kate is like, well, you don't fucking plan on
but
loving
Kate
Edwina.
but
But that's
Kate,
why I
like,
was saying at the beginning
doesn't.
when Mary was like, yeah, most men have mistresses, that I was like, maybe that's just why Kate doesn't make as much of a big deal out of it as
I
like I personally
guess.
think she should, because like
But,
she has this
like, no,
mentality.
I took that as, like, she believed it. Like, yeah, I don't
Oh no,
know.
I didn't.
So Anthony, like, walks over behind the desk and, like, sees
Sniffing.
her.
He's like,
Yeah.
what is that?
He's
It's like
like,
the telltale heart, but with a sound, with a
yeah.
smell. He's pouring a drink and he's like, why is it stronger by the desk? And then Kate's like crouched under the desk and she's like, don't look down, don't look down, look down. And then he turns and he like follows his nose down and he's like, are you fucking kidding me?
And then he, like, tries to stomp on her hand or something, and she, like, grabs his ankle and, like, digs into it. And
No, no,
Maria's
no.
like, "Is there an
She
animal
like,
back there?"
he grabs her ankle first and then he like, no, he like aims a kick at her and then, or like she like she hits him. She's the first to initiate violence.
Mhm.
And then he like stomps on her hand and she like makes a noise. And then Maria's like, is there an animal, like a dog? And Anthony's like,
Yeah.
I'm not mean enough to call Kate a dog while she can hear me. So I'm just going to tell Maria she needs to leave. And meanwhile, Kate is like either biting or like putting her nails into his ankle. And then he's like, I'm not sure like what is in my ankle, but like something is right now. And this is the first instance of like violence as foreplay for them. It's like very like, that's like their whole thing is like, just like physical violence as foreplay, which is why I'm like, again, a missed opportunity for kink. Opportunity for kink.
A lot of those.
I choose to believe that they're very kinky.
Yeah. So Anthony is like, oh, Maria, sorry. Like, can we get a rain check on this? And she's like, yeah, I guess, and leaves. And Kate comes out of the desk.
Anthony's like, why the fuck are you in my office? Kate's like, I swear to fucking God, like this was a total accident. And Anthony is now like, he has the rake urge to intimidate a virgin with his sexual prowess. And I really enjoy this trope because this trope always ends with the intention is to intimidate. And then like, you get switched around and suddenly you're like overwhelmed and then you're like, oh my God, I'm kissing her. Like I can't, like, you know what I mean? Like I really love the whole, like the rake is like, oh, I'm a big, strong man. And then he gets like 1 inch too close to the like heroine and he's like, fuck, like I'm just now worrying in quite a worried way if I might have made an error. And that's Anthony. He gets close, he sniffs, he like smells her, he like sees her and he's like, fuck. And he just kisses her. And it's a hot kiss, but I also kind of wanted Kate to like knee him in the balls.
Yeah.
And she doesn't. But I was like, I feel like that really would have fit in this scene.
Yeah, for sure. And then Kate's like, why'd you do that? And Anthony's like, don't worry, I'm still going to marry your sister. And she's like, you, like, whatever. That's when we get her being like, but you said you were going to like still keep your mistress. And he's like, no, I only said that if I didn't love my wife. Like, okay. And then she tries to leave, but the door is locked because he locked it when he came in. And she's like, can I have the key? And he like throws it to her, but like intentionally makes it so it like hits the ground. And I guess to his credit, he's immediately like, oh, I feel really bad about that. I want to like get on my hands and knees and pick it up and give it to her. But he doesn't. So it's kind of like shitty. So she has to like pick it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I do like that moment for Anthony. And also right before that, he like, so Kate is like, you have no honor. And Anthony is like, if you were a man, I'd call you out on that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. At this moment, you definitely don't have any honor. You are definitely not acting like Prince Zuko would be ashamed of you. That's how little honor you have.
It's straight out of the Jake Gyllenhaal playbook at this point.
Yeah, no, it's like, not. Yeah, I mean that's part of Anthony's journey is having to sort of unlearn all these like really like toxic behaviors that he has, and he realizes at the moment Kate looks at him and he realizes that like she doesn't respect him at all. She's like she doesn't just dislike me. She just like she thinks I'm like worthless, and he like immediately he's like, why does that make me feel really bad? Like, what I want her to respect me. Like, what are these feelings? What? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Stupid
so she leaves. She goes home. She doesn't tell Edwina about the kiss.
Yeah.
Or the cheat. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I don't know. Like, why? I guess because he like gaslit her into being like, oh, I only did that.
Uses
to, like,
kind of like
like I don't know.
No, but he uses kind of like purity culture shame on her because he's like, you kissed me back.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Which is like, I mean, she did technically kiss him back, but it's still like, yeah, I don't.
He initiated it, and it should be irrelevant. Yeah. Like, yeah, does she feel guilty?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, she's just like
Edwina. That like the day before was like, did he kiss you? And like, didn't seem as if she'd be mad, you know. So like, it wouldn't be that big of a betrayal.
If Kate admits to Edwina and Mary that he kissed her, like they have to get married. You know what I mean?
Not to
like,
yeah.
But I feel like Mary would very much be like, okay, go to Violet and be like, listen, Anthony like besmirched my daughter's aunt. Like you need to like.
But Edwina, she could tell Edwina without telling Mary.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess like
yeah, she doesn't tell him. And Anthony is a fucking dick. He sends flowers to Edwina the next day. And in the note, he says like the night was dull without you. And Kate like recognizes this as a personal slight to her. And I'm like, Anthony, that's below the belt. Like you, Anthony, bad boy. Like I just want to squirt him with some water. Like,
yeah. So
they're rolling on over to Kent for the Bridgerton house party at Aubrey Hall.
And Kate and Weena and Mary roll up, and Kate's like, wow, it's a really nice house. I'm, like, super into this house. Very, like,
Pride and Prejudice moment.
yep,
She's
yep,
like, ooh, I
Pemberley.
might have made an error.
And they get there, they meet Violet. Kate asks Violet if she can, like, go take a walk in her gardens because they're really nice. And everyone else, like, goes take a nap. So she does.
Meanwhile, Anthony has been watching the guests arrive. And
Once
he
again.
like watches Kate. He's like realizes that he's been holding his breath, like waiting for Kate to get out of the carriage. And he's like, this means nothing. And then he goes up to his mom. He's like, he likes pretending that he's like talking about Edwina, but like Violet like sees right through that. She's like, he's definitely fucking like checking in on Kate and like whether she's arrived. And then Violet's like, oh, you want to go for a walk? Why don't you go into the gardens? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And like that's where Kate's walking. And I do like that Kate and Anthony, it's like very reinforced during this part that Kate and Anthony are like country kids and they both like being like in farmland and like being out in nature and like hiking and walking around.
Yeah, because the Bridgertons like stopped spending as much time at the house after the dad died because it like reminded them. Yeah, so Anthony is like, I forget why, but he also goes for a walk.
Well, he's like, I think I'm going to take a walk so I don't have to like accidentally meet one of the guests. And Violet is like, why don't you take a walk in the garden? The flowers are really nice. Like the gardener's done a really good job right now. It's like,
yeah, we get like
no reason. Just go out. Yeah. It's pretty.
Because we get like a blip in Violet's head where she's like, oh, he's definitely like interested in the Sheffields. He was asking me about them. If only I could figure out which Sheffield, which is nice of her to not immediately assume it's Edwina.
Like, well, because Violet's MO, like she genuinely, like, she just wants her sons married. Like she really does not care to whom or like how hot they are. Like she just wants them down the aisle.
She's busy working on her 64 grandkids. They each have the same productivity as her and Eddie. Yeah.
So Kate, like Anthony and Kate meet in the garden and Kate is like, what are you stalking me? And then Anthony's like, what are you stalking me? And this whole time I'm just waiting for Anthony to fucking apologize. And then he eventually does apologize for like being a dick. And then Kate's like, you're apologizing for the kiss. And Anthony in his head is like, no, I wasn't apologizing for the kiss, but like, I guess also the kiss, I should apologize for that as well. He's mostly apologizing for just being a dick. And I'm like, I accept your apology, but like I kind of want him to grovel a little bit more. But then I also thought like, would Kate respect him if he did grovel? Like if he was someone who was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Because Kate at the beginning, Edwina is like, they say that Anthony is the first man that Kate can't manage because she's like been managing all of Edwina's beaux and like all of her suitors and stuff. And like she really like she's better than them. She's smarter than them. She's more strong-willed than them. Like she can easily like bend them to her will. And Anthony is like the first person who like actually presents a challenge. And so I feel like that's like I don't think she would like necessarily respect him if he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You know what I mean? Like he apologizes, but like I don't think Kate would want I think she's like, no, I need someone who will challenge me the same way that like Anthony needs someone who will challenge him. And I think it's Anthony and Kate very much have the same. They're like two elements that like go into, I think, their like core personality / trauma. And like one is the idea that they think they're like better than everyone and like and I mean they are to an extent. And then the other is like that they feel like responsible for their siblings and their family. And they both experience that. But I think in Anthony's case, his primary thing of those two is the like he thinks he's better than one. He's like, I'm the Viscount, I'm privileged, I'm like whatever, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And Kate's more of the like, I have to like always sacrifice my needs for my family. And so they both need each other, that like strong-willed aspect. Like they both need that part of the other person. Anthony needs someone who's gonna like knock his ego down a peg and like challenge him and like actually like, you know, make him think critically about like his actions and like all of that stuff. And like that's what Kate does for him. But Kate needs someone who's going to like not just convince her to take down her walls, like someone who's just like constantly take like a sledgehammer, like the metaphorical cast iron frying pan, who's just going to consistently like take that to her walls. Like every time she keeps trying to build him back up, he's just going to be like, nope, take care of yourself, bitch. You deserve happiness. Like you deserve to prioritize yourself. And like they both do that for each other. And so that's why I don't think this relationship would work if either of them were ever like the groveling type, even though I love a good grovel.
Sure, yeah.
Like I don't think they'd be able to respect each other.
Yeah, I think the apologizing for the kiss, though, is also supposed to be the classic, like, he didn't mean to apologize for that, but, like, the other person, like, kind of is you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
feel like it happens a lot. It's like they're
No. No.
apologizing yeah.
No, but he also explicitly is like, I'm also apologizing for, like, how I act for, like, what I said." Like,
That's
he's
not what I
apologizing for
mean.
both.
That's not what I mean. I mean, he apologizes. He doesn't mean the kiss. She said, "You're apologizing for the kiss." She doesn't want him to be apologizing for the kiss.
Yeah.
He hears that and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess." He like, and she's like, "Of course he wouldn't wanna kiss a, quote, aging spinster." Like, I don't understand how did that ever happen, this, like, gaslighting when women generally live longer than men?
Well,
Like,
maybe
how
not
did
at this
this
time when they constantly died in childbirth.
I'm pretty sure it was still, like that, like, evened it out, you know? Like, men had the traumatic accidents at age, like, 20. Women
Oh,
had the
yeah.
childbirth. So, like, what? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Just my point is, like, I don't think either of them would respect the other person if they were, like, the groveling sort.
Maybe.
If they didn't
Yeah.
have, like, backbones of iron.
Mhm.
That, like, because that's the thing, is they're not bending them their backbones. They're, like, melting each other's backbones with, like, passion and, like, fiery wit.
I guess so. I feel like there's some bending.
They're
But
just, like,
yeah.
they're bringing the forge up, you know?
Mhm. So, Anthony now feels better about himself because he thinks he's, like, won her over or whatever, like, doesn't feel as much like a scumbag. And he's ready to go win over Edwina because, quote, "procrastination was for those who had longer to live," end quote. Because remember, he's gonna
Oh,
die.
that's true. He does think he's gonna die in, like, less than 10 years. But he's also, like, on the verge of kissing her. He's like, "Hang on,
Mm.
like, that kiss was really good. Like, what if I just I
Mm.
don't know, like, didn't marry Edwina and, like, married Kate," but, like, right before he, like, is gonna kiss her and, like, he's basically like, "I could kiss her now, but if I kiss her now, like, I definitely have to propose." He's like, "One kiss can be excused, but, like, the other kiss, like, a second kiss, like, absolutely not." But then good old cock block Colin rolls on up and he's like, "We're gonna play Pow Mau," which is just old-timey croquet for those of you that don't know what the fuck Pow Mau is. Well, 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 if it isn't the consequences of our own actions. This one, it turns out, is going to be a two-parter. Despite our best intentions, we just had so much fun talking about this book that you're going to tune in and listen to us talk about it some more next week. We really hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at We Read It One Night, on Twitter at We Read It Podcast, or email us, wereaditonenight@gmail.com. And if you have any ideas on things that we can do better or things that you think we do really well, feel free to give us a rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Godspeed, comrades.